video. So a couple weeks ago on Valentine's Day, I went to see Wuthering Heights with my boyfriend, and after the movie was over, he turned to me and said, "Every moment of that was agony." And like, I don't know if I would go that far, but yeah, it wasn't very good. So yeah, let's talk about it. But before we begin, this video is sponsored by absolutely no one because I only have like 250 subscribers. In fact, statistically speaking, about 99% of the people watching this video are not subscribed. But if you want to change that, you should go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now. If you want to see more of a 24-year-old white woman whining about the media that she consumes, then you should definitely check out this channel, subscribe to it, like and comment, and you will get so much more. Problem number 1, this is not an adaptation of Wuthering Heights. And no, I'm not saying this because it's not an accurate adaptation, I'm saying this because it's not an adaptation at all. That's not what this is. Wuthering Heights, the movie, directed by Fennell, is a fan fiction of Wuthering Heights, the book, by Emily Bronte. This is not a loose adaptation with a few elements changed to better suit the director's vision, or the new visual medium, or even to make it more marketable, but we'll talk about the marketing. This is a version of the story that focuses on one singular element of Wuthering Heights and then randomly adds a bunch of stuff that never happened in the book, but that I guess Fennell wanted to happen. And if you've ever read fanfiction, you're probably realizing that sounds a whole lot like fanfiction, because that's what this is. So now's probably a good time to mention that I've actually never read the book. I did buy it in hopes of eventually reading it, but who am I kidding? I bought it because it's pretty. I mean, look at it. Look at how pretty it is, and the pages are painted. They're painted. Isn't that pretty? So if you're here for complaints about how this isn't book accurate, unfortunately, you will not be getting that. I'm sorry. What you will be getting, though, is my confusion as to why this was sold to us as just like a spicier version of Wuthering Heights or an inaccurate adaptation of Wuthering Heights when like that's not what this is. But I decided to go into this movie completely blind and just watch it on its own merits as a movie. I went into this knowing literally nothing about the book. But as I was watching the movie, I was kind of like, I feel like this didn't happen in the book. Okay, this definitely didn't happen in the book. This was definitely added just for the movie. And so after I watched the movie, I was curious to see what was taken from the book and what was a movie original, so I went on Wikipedia and read the summary. And it turns out there are even fewer things in the movie that are actually in the book than I thought. What the fuck? Here is a complete list of things that happens in both the book and the movie. A boy of unknown origin is taken in by a family, and a member of the family names him Heathcliff. He becomes particularly close with the daughter, Catherine. As they get older, Heathcliff and Catherine fall in love, but then Catherine gets proposed to by this rich guy named Edgar. Catherine accepts the proposal because, like, she needs the money, but he's also a nice guy, and she tells this to her servant, Nellie, and Heathcliff overhears, but he only overhears the parts where she's like, "It would degrade me to marry Heathcliff. If I married Heathcliff, I would be a beggar on the streets. I could never." So Heathcliff runs away and promises revenge on someone at some point. But then he comes back years later, mysteriously wealthy. He, at some point, buys his and Catherine's old home with this mysterious wealth. I probably should have just clipped this to my shirt for this part. I don't remember what number we're on right now. Let's go with 8. He buys the old home with his wealth from a male family member with a gambling addiction. And then at some point, this male family member dies. Heathcliff marries Edgar's sister as part of his revenge. Catherine gets upset when Edgar says that she can't hang around Heathcliff anymore, so she self-isolates, and at some point she's pregnant and she dies with complications from pregnancy. Now, if you don't know anything about Wuthering Heights like I did when I saw the movie, you're probably thinking, well, that sounds like a complete start-to-finish 3-act narrative. In fact, I thought the same thing because I had heard elsewhere that this is only adapting the first half of the book, and I was like, what more book could there possibly be to adapt? But here's where I was wrong. First off, there are quite a few details in the story that we do get that are changed. In the book, Heathcliff gets his name from Catherine's dad, but in the movie, he gets it from Catherine, who names him after her dead brother. And like, since the movie focuses more on the Heathcliff-Catherine love story thing, then like, I think that's fine. That seems to be a choice that makes sense to me, but again, I have not read the book. Now, in the movie, Nellie knows that Heathcliff is like listening in on their conversation, but like lets Catherine continue specifically so that Heathcliff will overhear and not pursue Catherine anymore. Presumably because she wants to move into a nice house. I think in the book this doesn't happen. I don't think Nellie knows. That's my understanding anyway. Again, I haven't read it, so I don't know. Let's see if I can figure this out. I also want to point out, I'm like actually opening up this book for the first time, and I love the little details. Like for the pages of the books, like every chapter, there's like a little horse. I love that, but I cannot figure out what point of the book I'm at. I'm on page 87, and I have no idea what's going on. So I think this is a waste. I probably should have just read the book. But I wanted to talk about the movie. Now, apparently in the book, when Heathcliff promises revenge, he doesn't actually promise revenge on Catherine for rejecting him and getting married to Edgar. He is promising revenge on Edgar, not for proposing to Catherine, but for rejecting him, like when they first meet, and like not letting him in his house. Presumably because Heathcliff is not white and Edgar is a little bit racist. Unclear though, because again, I have not read the book. This is another really big one. In the movie, the man who owns the estate is Catherine's father, and he's the one with the gambling addiction. But in the book, it's her brother. Her brother's not dead in this, and his name is not Heathcliff. He takes over when the father dies at the beginning of the book, and then he dies later in the spot where the dad dies in the movie. Finally, in the book, Catherine dies in childbirth, but that baby makes it and grows up and is basically like the main character for the second half of the book. But in the movie, she has, I think it's an ectopic pregnancy where like she has a miscarriage, but they have to, like, they need medical intervention to complete the miscarriage, but they, like, wait too long, and then the baby dies, and so then she dies of sepsis or something, and then the movie ends. And then there's the stuff that the movie just adds out of thin air, the fan fiction, if you will. In the movie, there's a whole part, probably like a third of the movie, maybe that's a little generous, like a quarter of the movie, Catherine and Heathcliff are having an affair, and you get to see all of the spicy details. And then Edgar says that he doesn't want Heathcliff around because of the affair, and he knows about the affair because Nellie told him, because Nellie was mad because Catherine fired her, because Catherine found out that she knew that Heathcliff was eavesdropping earlier in the story. None of this happens in the book. Catherine and Heathcliff, they never even get together in the book. Another thing that never happened in the book is that after Heathcliff marries Isabella, he like has her write all these letters to be like, help me, he's abusing me. But I think in the movie he's like not really doing that, or like if he is, she's super into it. And I think in the book he like actually is kind of an abusive asshole, and like in the movie it's just cosplay. Like he just has like the hard exterior, but like he's made soft by the love of a woman or something. But then also he makes Isabella dress up like a dog in the movie, obviously not the book. So when I watched the movie, I assumed that like in the book Catherine and Heathcliff have an affair, but like we obviously don't like see any of it. We don't get all the gory details because like I'm pretty sure you couldn't really print erotica in the 19th century Probably. I assume. I'm not a historian, man. I don't know. Because again, I was told that this is just a really inaccurate, loose adaptation of Wuthering Heights with some sex scenes thrown in. And also, Heathcliff is white for some reason. But that's not what this is. It's Wuthering Heights fanfiction. Emerald Fennell, liked the pining in the book and wanted the pining to blossom into something more, a pine tree, if you will. So she took this one aspect of the book and made it take up the entire movie. It's fan fiction. Truly, the highest budget fan fiction ever produced. Like, if you're a Raylo, you've definitely read a fan fiction where, like, it starts out and it just seems to be following the exact events of a Star War you've seen before, and then about, like, 2 chapters in, it suddenly turns into not that, and suddenly, like, Rey and Kylo Ren are just, having sex but from miles away using their force vision that Rian Johnson gave them in The Last Jedi. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe for you, it was like supernatural or something. I don't know. And this movie is basically the classic literature version of this. Like, let's take the most famous fanfiction, 50 Shades of Grey. It's basically Twilight. Like, it follows the Twilight plot beat for beat. And then it just takes out all of the vampires and werewolves and throws in a few sex scenes. Now, obviously, they couldn't sell 50 Shades as Twilight fanfiction because, copyright and, Twilight has been produced within the last 100 years, so it's not public domain yet. So they just changed a bunch of the names and a little bit of the setting to pass it off as an original story. But Wuthering Heights is public domain. So if you wanted to commercially sell Wuthering Heights fanfiction, you could do that. So why then is this movie marketed as an adaptation? Plenty of other popular media have done the same thing and not done that. West Side Story is probably closer to a loose adaptation than Wuthering Heights is to its original source material, and they changed everyone's name and the entire setting, and Juliet doesn't even die at the end of it. But I'm pretty sure other than just those few details, it's beat for beat Romeo and Juliet. But at least they called it something different. Another musical that is basically fan fiction, I guess. Not really. The musical Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet is kind of similarly to Wuthering Heights, an adaptation of just one small part of War and Peace. It's literally just one chapter. And it's supposed to be pretty accurate, but I'm not actually familiar with either of those pieces of media. I have not read War and Peace, and I also have not listened to or seen Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet, so maybe this was a bad example. But again, they don't call it War and Peace, the musical, because if they did, that would be weird. And I know a lot of people are already typing in the comments, but this version of Wuthering Heights had quotes around the title so that people knew it wasn't a straight adaptation of Wuthering Heights. And first off, the posters and the trailers had quotes around it, but like, if you look at the title of the movie when you Google it, there are no quotes around it. That's only included in the stylization in the posters and the trailer. The movie itself is just called Wuthering Heights, no quotes. And second, the quotation marks are very easy to miss. And even if you do catch them, it's like, okay, what does that mean? It's like if Clueless was just titled Emma, but with quotes around it. And look, I get that fanfiction, it can be kind of a hard sell for mainstream audiences, but if you were gonna get this weird with it, you might as well have just been honest. Like, yeah, a lot of people were unaware of 50 Shades fanfiction backstory when it first got published and got really big. Like, my mom read all of the books, and I told her a few years ago that it was originally Twilight fanfiction, and she was shocked. She had no idea. But I also don't think my mom knows what fanfiction is still to this day, so. But people don't make fun of 50 Shades because it's fanfiction. They make fun of it because it's bad. The Love Hypothesis is getting a movie, and that book does not at all try to shy away from the fact that it's Raylo fanfiction. Like, can you tell what fictional couple this book was originally a fanfiction from? It's so subtle, you can hardly tell. Like, not to mention that the Kylo Ren stand-in, they just named him Adam. like that one, like Adam Driver. They're not even trying to hide it at all. And then apparently for the movie, they got Daisy Ridley's real life husband to play him. Like, they're leaning into it. They're not trying to hide that it's fan fiction, and people are okay with this. Like, again, this book was a huge hit. They are making a movie out of it. Also in the Allie Hazelwood universe, I wonder which fictional couple this one's based on. Both of these books were huge hits. No one seems to care that it's very obviously fan fiction with the serial numbers filed off. In fact, for a lot of people, this is not a bug, but a feature. If you're gonna be shameless, if you're gonna be kinky, why be embarrassed by the fact that it's fan fiction? Why try to trick the audience into thinking that this is just an adaptation with some sex scenes thrown in? That's not what this is. Problem 2, it's really hard to hide that this is fan fiction when everyone acts like a Wattpad character. Here is a list of some of the fan fiction tropes that appear in this movie. And keep in mind, this is a non-comprehensive list. Male love interest is an immediate simp for female protagonists for basically no reason. Male love interest flies into a murderous rage at the thought of any other male getting with the female protagonist. Male love interest is thrust into a situation where he has to touch the female protagonist while shirtless. The situation in question is stopping the female protagonist from watching other characters have kinky sex. This makes the female protagonist extremely horny. The male love interest walks in on the female protagonist playing downstairs DJ. The female protagonist says, "This is your fault," and the male love interest gets a sly smirk on his face and says, "Oh, how is it my fault?" The male love interest says, "I have you now," during their first sexual interaction. The female protagonist starts acting like a jealous bitch when the male love interest becomes attached to another female character, even though she is romantically involved with someone else. Fingers in mouth. Call the male love interest Jack Harlow because he doesn't mind those whips and chains, but also he's vanilla, baby. And finally, does he fuck you like how I fuck you while they fuck? And that's like half of it. So yeah, this movie is trying to convince you that this is a bold, new way of telling a story. Taking a classic story you know and love and making it sexy. But because this is just Wuthering Heights fanfiction, it falls into the same fanfiction tropes that have been done over and over and over again. So it's not really breaking any new ground. It's just fanfiction with high production quality. This very much feels like low art masquerading as high art. Like, one second you'll be looking at this gorgeous shot with gorgeous lighting and outrageous costume design, and then the next, like, Jacob Elordi will be fucking Margot Robbie in a carriage while she's like, "Hurry, Heathcliff, Edgar will be back any minute." And then there's like a Bridgerton montage of them having sex in various locations. But unlike Bridgerton, where they bridge the gap between modern romance and period piece by playing a string quartet version of Wildest Dreams by Taylor Swift, they're just playing full synth Charlie XCX over everything. Oh yeah, Charlie XCX wrote like 12 original songs for this. They all sound exactly the same, and they're all wildly out of place. Like, at this point, I don't even know why Charlie bothered writing new songs for this. Like, just play Party for You. It fits. On Letterboxd, I gave this movie 2 stars, because good definitely exists in this movie, but I don't think it knows what it wants to be. The framing and the stylistic choices suggest that the filmmakers think that this is a serious story, that they are taking seriously, but the story itself is just period piece 50 Shades. Meanwhile, I gave 50 Shades, the movie, 3 stars, because while this does have the similar problem of obvious effort being put in despite the horrendous script, 50 Shades still absolutely knows what it is. It's not going for high art, it's just going for better than it has any right to be, which is respectable. Problem 3, the cast and the characters. So normally I really like Margot Robbie. I think that she is one of the best actresses working today, period. But her performance in this movie, just not all there. So Catherine is supposed to be around 20 during the events of the book, and Margot Robbie already looks much older than 20 years old, which would be fine if they decided to age this character up. But I almost think they aged this character down. Like, they never say how old the characters are supposed to be, but in the first half of this movie, Catherine acts like a teenager. She's bratty, she whines and complains, she negs Heathcliff, she has full-on temper tantrums. "Hello, beautiful girl. Okay, please don't make that fall. Come be in mommy's video. Come here. Come be on YouTube." Okay, she moved to the camera, but that's okay, 'cause she's here and we love her. Hopefully you can see her. Oh my gosh! Yay! I've always wanted to have a cat in my lap while I do YouTube. This is the dream. This is peak Zoe B realness. This is gonna be a distraction. This video has already been a terrible distraction. Like, I feel like I'm almost gonna... Oh, and there she goes. She gets better in the later part of the movie after she gets married. I almost want to say she got more mature, but that doesn't really feel entirely accurate either. She's still just a huge bitch. Really, she's just more calculated than her earlier self. She's definitely not more mature. Like, she's still jealous of the guy that she rejected. And, like, it's almost comical how quickly she goes from hating him again to just having a full-on affair with him. And she's also particularly mean to Isabella at this point in the story, like serving period piece Regina George realness. So Jacob Elordi in the role of Heathcliff. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of talk about the race thing. I don't think I'm gonna be able to give great commentary because, again, I haven't read the book, so just bear with me. So, putting race aside for a second, I think he is fine in the role. Sometimes he really sucks, but most of the time he's okay, I guess. And honestly, I think the choice to make Heathcliff white, it's really just a missed opportunity, and it makes the story a lot less interesting. Like, this was honestly, like, the most boring choice you could possibly make. The most boring, but also controversial choice you could possibly make. Like, everyone's mean to Heathcliff in the beginning of the story, and it's implied it's because, like, he's of a lower class, and he's poor, and he's uneducated. But, like, I don't know, I feel like it makes more sense for everyone to be mean to him if everyone else is white and he is, you know, ethnically ambiguous, some type of non-white, which is apparently what he's supposed to be in the book. He's either Romani or ethnically ambiguous. It's unclear, apparently. But yeah, I think this would just make everything a lot more layered and interesting to keep that racial tension aspect. It would also make you root for him a little bit more, especially after Catherine decides not to marry Heathcliff. It adds that extra sting to her comments. It makes his interaction with Edgar and Catherine's dad more interesting. It makes his mysterious success more interesting. And this version of Heathcliff was in desperate need of being more sympathetic and more interesting, because honestly, he sucks just as much as Catherine. He's also constantly whining, he's also a huge jerk, a giant douchebag, also deeply immature, and he also chains up Isabella and makes her act like a dog. So, not the most sympathetic guy in the world. And I'm honestly just so confused as to why making this character white and removing all of the racial tensions. Damn it, Daisy. Please don't touch that. Come back on my lap. Come here. Come on. It's nice and comfy up here. Yay! Ow. And I'm honestly just confused as to why making Heathcliff white and removing the racial tensions from the story was so important for Emerald Fennell's vision. Like, I am like 90% sure that the only reason this came about is because she was like, so we're just gonna put the most attractive actors that you can possibly think of in the roles of Catherine and Heathcliff. And everyone was like, okay, most attractive woman I can think of, Margot Robbie. That makes sense. Most attractive man, Jacob Elordi. And then she just didn't question it when they were only naming white guys. And she was like, sure, sounds legit, which... yikes. But there are many non-white, even specifically ethnically ambiguous men who are extremely attractive, who you could have put in this role. Darren Criss is probably the biggest one. KJ Apa of Riverdale fame, and you could say that he and Jacob Elordi have very similar backgrounds as actors. Although KJ Apa, I guess, does kind of look white, but he is apparently half Samoan. This guy... Darren Barnett. Yeah, Darren Barnett. He's pretty good looking. Apparently he's on like a Netflix show that's pretty popular. And if none of these guys are famous enough for you, well, here's a whole host of actors who are very attractive, who are not white, and their race is a little more obvious, but they are still very attractive. Michael B. Jordan comes to mind. Regé-Jean Page, hasn't really been getting a lot of work since Bridgerton, which is really disappointing because, like, I mean, I think he's very attractive, but he's also just very good at acting. I would like to see him in more stuff. They should have cast him in this movie. So yeah, missed opportunities all around involving Heathcliff. Isabella was actually kind of my favorite part of the movie. Her character is so deeply weird and by far the biggest freak out of the bunch. At first, she's a freak in like the classically weird way. Like she collects Catherine's hair to make a doll out of. She also makes her this little like pop-up book that's filled with a bunch of like sexual innuendos, and it was like the only joke that made me laugh in the whole movie. And then at one point, Catherine tells her like, you couldn't handle Heathcliff. He doesn't even want you. And she gets mad, and so she like destroys the dollhouse that she made that's like an exact replica of her house, and she like murders Catherine's doll. She makes that dollhouse look like a massacre. It is peak insane woman. Look at this cat I have. Oh my goodness. And then Heathcliff straight up breaks into her room to have sex with her, and she's super down. Honestly, I heard people say Jacob Elordi was hot in this movie, and like, I didn't really get it for most of the runtime. And then he just kept asking Isabella, do you want me to stop? And I was like, I get it. Like, yes. Ask for my consent. And like, Isabella just goes along with all of his shenanigans. Like, you want me to act like a dog? Bark, bark, woof, woof. You want me to write letters saying you're abusing me? Okay. You want to continue undressing me even though someone else just walked in the room? Be my guest. Like, I kind of respected just how weird she was on every level. I thought the actor who played Edgar was pretty good too. He was one of the few characters I didn't hate. Apparently, though, he's even more likable in the book. Like, he has a much more pronounced personality, which also feels like a missed opportunity because I feel like one of the only reasons I didn't hate him in this was because he was just kind of boring more than anything else. Like, he's almost written to be like a blank slate, just no thoughts, head empty. Oh, I guess my wife is having an affair. All right. Oh, my wife is dead. Oh, I'm sad. And like by the end of the movie, I was just so fed up with everyone's bullshit that when Catherine does die, I was relieved. Nellie was by far the best performance in the movie and the most interesting character. Apparently, she's actually like almost the narrator of the book, I guess. And again, this feels like a wasted opportunity because her actress is giving like the performance of a lifetime. Like, I honestly wish she was the main character. Everyone else in the movie that I haven't mentioned, just assume I hate them too. Problem 4, the sex stuff. So does this movie have anything to say about sexuality, or is Emerald Fennell just horny? I'm gonna have to go with option 2. Making sex a big focus of your classic literature fanfiction movie is an interesting choice, and I feel like this could have been good commentary about the time period or about women's relationship to sex throughout history, and it almost feels like they wanted to do that but didn't. There's a scene where Catherine is like peeking through the floorboards watching two servants have sex. Then Heathcliff walks in and he like covers her eyes and her mouth, and like it's kind of implied that like she's too pure or innocent to witness sex. Then the next day, Catherine has to excuse herself to go play downstairs DJ because the thought of Heathcliff shirtless while listening to two people have sex is just making her really horny. And so I think it's kind of trying to imply that like this is her first encounter with anything sexual. And again, the characters I think are supposed to be like early 20s, perhaps even late teens, the way that they're acting, but the actors are in their 30s, and so this is weird. Then Heathcliff walks in on her, and they immediately have a very sexually charged encounter. Like, I struggle to even call it a sexually charged encounter. It was a sexual encounter, but, like, technically nothing happened, I guess. Also, this is not the point, but this scene was done so poorly that, like, me and my boyfriend were just, like, crying laughing in the theater. Like, it is just so fanficky, and, like, I don't know, I guess that's not what I expected. I don't know what we expected, but not that. But then it suddenly does seem like Catherine understands the implications of this, I think. And then we fast forward to Catherine and Heathcliff having an affair, and that almost seems more like CW or freeform drama where like the sex is just there to kind of make the story more dramatic and to make the tea more juicy. I'm mixing my gossip metaphors, but you know what I mean. But there aren't really any creative choices to make the sex scenes, like, I don't know, politically charged, thematically charged. They aren't there to say anything about either of these characters' supposed sexualities. If they do say anything, it's that Catherine makes Heathcliff, like, softer, I guess, because in every other sexual situation he's in, he is very much like a more like dominating presence. But if that's what they're trying to say, they don't really go anywhere with that other than like, I don't know, Heathcliff just loves Catherine more, and when she dies, it makes him sad. Since we don't get that latter part of Wuthering Heights, since the story ends as soon as it dies, we don't have the chance to explore that. We don't have the chance to explore if she really did fix him, you know? We don't have the chance to explore why he acts a certain way around her and not around the other woman that he's involved with. But yeah, no, we don't get into any of that. It's just these two people are having sex, but they're not supposed to. It's very much like the same way that Bridgerton uses sex to further the story along, or the same way that, I don't know, Riverdale uses sex to move the story along. And because we couldn't explore the reasons why Heathcliff acts differently, like, it just feels very jarring. Like, we get to his marriage to Isabella, and like suddenly he's got whips and chains Christian Grey style, and it's just very unclear why. Like, I guess maybe he couldn't be kinky with Catherine because like they were meeting in secret and they had to be more conspicuous. But the movie also almost implies that like his aggressive, dominant, monstrous self is kind of his true self. Again, this movie's messaging and themes are just so mixed. I honestly don't even know what it was really trying to say. But if his true self is supposed to be like his, you know, more kinky, dominant self, then why is it that that would come out more when he's with a woman he doesn't love, if this is supposed to be the love story of Heathcliff and Catherine? Like, I think the only thing that you really can get from this is that like he was made soft by the love of a woman and she fixed him. But if that's the case, then why are we presenting this story like it's like some kind of high art, or like this has never been done before? Like, this is probably the most pervasive romance cliche of all time. You're not doing anything special or different here. You're just applying a really, what is apparently a very complex and detailed story, and you're making it lame. Not lame, it doesn't have to be lame, but like, why would you take a very like detailed, complex, classic story and then just, you know, make very baseline, typical, cliched fanfiction out of it, when you could do that with anything? And even then, there are a lot of like classic literature stories that kind of are pretty basic, and that's why they are so popular. It's because they were kind of like the first of their kind. Like Pride and Prejudice comes to mind. Why didn't you just do this to Pride and Prejudice? I have not read Pride and Prejudice, but I have seen the 2005 movie, and like, I understand that there were some creative liberties taken with that, but it's like, the way that I've heard people talk about it, it's like 60% accurate, give or take. And like, I don't know, I feel like Pride and Prejudice is a story that can work if you make it hornier. You know what I mean? Because that kind of is the first, you know, I can fix him, I don't like you to lovers type thing. And that's kind of a staple of the romance genre as a whole. And we might not be there if we didn't have stories like Pride and Prejudice, or even like, I don't know, the Phantom of the Opera kind of, and Beauty and the Beast definitely. Like, you could totally make like a horny Beauty and the Beast. Why hasn't anyone done that? I don't know, does The Shape of Water count? Does Beastly count? Not really. No, I just want a straight Beauty and the Beast, but there's some sex scenes thrown in. Can we get that instead? I would watch that. Now, to be fair, something I haven't really mentioned up until this point is that Emerald Fennell has said that this adaptation of Wuthering Heights is supposed to make the audience feel how the book made her feel when she was a teenager. And I can completely understand a teenage brain reading a book and imagining it as hornier. That's why fan fiction exists in the first place. It's mainly there for teenage girls to make the thing they like hornier. I say mainly, that's kind of, fan fiction is a real art form. I've been kind of like shitting on it most of this video. People have used fan fiction to do really interesting and creative things with an already existing story, and I'm not here to shit on that at all. Like, I hope you guys know what I mean when I say this is super fanficky, this is super tropey. Like, I mean like a specific type of fanfiction, what most people are writing, not what the extremely talented people are writing. I'm talking about the type of fanfiction that I have written, and not the type of fanfiction that people with talent have written. But yeah, this does feel like kind of a roundabout way of saying you just wanted to make smut of classic literature. Like, it almost feels like she's embarrassed by it. Like, in her own explanations of what this movie is, she is embarrassed to admit that it's, you know, a shameless, hyper-dramatic fan fiction. And I'd have to imagine that after winning an Oscar for Best Screenplay, there probably is a lot of pressure to only make stuff that critics are going to like, you know, things that are masterpieces or high art, and not something that's just a good, fun, engaging story that isn't really trying to challenge anything. Especially after a movie like Promising Young Woman, which if you haven't seen, I recommend it. I know that there are a lot of people who don't like it. I think it's a good movie. I think it's really interesting. I think it's a really good, like, revenge arc that I think has a lot to say about, you know, not just sexual assault, but about, how do we deal with sexual assault after someone we know experiences it, or after we experience it. But yeah, Emerald Fennell is someone who, from the limited knowledge I have of her, is someone who wants to tell interesting, compelling stories. And sometimes that means you're going to be starting a really interesting conversation about society and about the themes that you can put in a movie. And other times that just means making a really entertaining movie that isn't really breaking any ground. And that's okay, but I think a lot of artists are, you know, once they do make the high art thing, they would degrade themselves to make the low art thing, and I think that's why she's kind of shielding herself here. But like I said, fanfiction can be a real, interesting, artful form of storytelling, and if she really did want to push boundaries because that expectation is there for her, then I think what she could have done is, you know, take the idea of fanfiction seriously. Or she could have just acknowledged that it is shameless and tropey to begin with, and she could have said, you know, this isn't gonna make you feel the same way that something like Promising Young Woman made you feel. It's not gonna really start a conversation, but this is the story that I wanted to tell. There is a place in culture for stories that aren't groundbreaking, that aren't trying to challenge you, that are just kind of brainless so that you can just watch and enjoy the crazy ride. And an Oscar winner doing that and admitting that she was doing that would have been kind of radical, but she seems embarrassed to say that that's what she's doing and that's what the movie is, so she finds roundabout ways to explain it. Like I said, I am pretty unfamiliar with the source materials, so there is probably a lot that got lost in translation here, but that's kind of the problem. It's weird to present something as Wuthering Heights to someone who is unfamiliar with Wuthering Heights when that's not really what it is. It makes more sense to present this to your audience and say outright, this is Wuthering Heights fanfiction. You don't have to have read Wuthering Heights to enjoy it. And it seems that people who have read Wuthering Heights don't enjoy it, but they might have enjoyed it more if you had just told them it was fan fiction and that it wasn't trying to challenge anything. So I don't feel like I've experienced a real story start to finish. I feel like I've experienced like a melodramatic fantasy of a complete story, and I kind of wish that that's what I had been told, that that's what I'd be getting. So yeah, that's the video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are about Wuthering Heights in the comments. Let me know if you've read the book, if you've seen this new movie, what you thought about it. I would love to hear from you. Next video, I don't know what I'm actually gonna do next. I haven't really thought too much ahead. I know what I want to do in May, but I don't know what I want my April video to be. So So, if anyone has any ideas, if anyone could tell me of any movies that are coming out that I can go see and make a little quick one, that would be great. I also recommend checking out my Substack newsletter. I haven't updated it in a little while. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! My cat is pooping in front of me. I filmed this in the same videos where my cat's litter box is. Good thing I didn't kick her out this time. This is another one that I bought and tried to read but didn't. This just isn't really my thing though. I like a little more thread of death in my books. This doesn't really have that. This is just a straight romance novel. God, what is this video? This is a mess. My shirt says, if villain bad, then why hot? And I'm pretty sure that's the entire thesis behind this movie.